Wilson, and I'd like to welcome you to a special edition of Realizing Potential. I'm always honored to have an array of guests from varied and diverse backgrounds on the show, and periodically I'd like to take the opportunity to showcase those individuals who have had a global impact in various industries and various realms. Today is no exception as it relates to showcasing those type individuals. I'm honored to share with this audience that we have recently changed at the helm of our leadership space, and the baton has been passed over to this amazing individual that I have the honor of introducing to you, the community, the regional area, and the state of Georgia. He is none other than our incoming president, Dr. Lawrence Drake. How are you today, sir?
Good morning. I am great. Thank you.
Good,
Thank you.
good.
Thanks for having me.
It's my pleasure. It's my pleasure, and to introduce you to the Southwest Georgia community through this amazing platform. I want those that are not just our students, faculty, and staff, but those viewers out there to learn a little bit about you, why you believe the baton was passed to you. But let's start off, as I do with all of my guests, sharing with the viewers a little bit about your educational background, and then we'll segue into your professional space.
Okay. Well, this is always the part that I hate the most. I really don't enjoy necessarily talking about myself, but I am originally from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I grew up in a very hard scrabble neighborhood, and really didn't have any designs on going to college or expanding my own experiences other than my neighborhood. I was very comfortable where I grew up. I really believed that my neighborhood was the sanctuary, as tough as it was, and the best place to be. As I said, I didn't have any real designs on going to college, but I had a grandmother who was one of 20, and she had a different view about what I should do as her oldest grandchild. And consequently, despite all of the challenges and things that you go through in a very difficult neighborhood, I ended up making it to college, and then doing some things that I never thought possible, or certainly couldn't have imagined. And those things, those experiences, all have shaped me.
Sure.
And have given me the opportunity to be here today.
Outstanding. So what I often love, and I'd like to pay some homage, if you will, to your grandmother, because it's important that we recognize in our lineage those individuals who were visionaries and could not see, or saw what we could not even dream or imagine. Yeah. So for her to be adamant about this is what you will do, in many respects, has changed the course of history, because you've now become a global change agent.
You know what? That woman was something to behold. She was, she was a product of the South. My family's lineage on my father's side, from Africa and essentially Alabama, migrating to Pennsylvania. And she did have a sense of what could happen. She had a vision of what could be, knowing that she might not ever see it come to fruition. Yes. Although she did see me get my first undergraduate degree. I have 2 undergraduate degrees, 2 master's degrees, and a doctorate. I don't think I ever could have envisioned that I would be or have that kind of educational journey. But she didn't have any designs on what the limitations were. Something that I have learned to try to live out, and that is to focus on the possibilities versus the limitations. Sure. Because it's always easy to look at what you can't do through the lens of maybe the immediate circumstance, but I think that's one of the magic opportunities that we have in the learning space we call higher ed, and more specifically now at Albany State, is how do we get them to dream past the things that they can see that are limitations, and really embrace the possibilities.
Absolutely. You and I were having an interesting conversation yesterday about that. And so we have a very, it's a beautiful responsibility, but sometimes it can be very difficult because of our customer base, our students, and that they're coming from all different backgrounds and experiences. And sometimes in those experiences, what you and I were discussing is that you mentioned the point of dreaming. So you may have run across those students who don't even know how to dream. And so getting them to that starting point and then carrying it out to fruition or playing a role in that.
Well, interestingly enough, I actually believe that many of our adults don't know how to dream. And the way that I think about that, because I've seen it manifest, is, when we're born into the world, when we're blessed to, get a place in humanity by being born, the world is really our oyster, even if we are born into poverty or difficult circumstances. But sometimes we work very hard to try to work ourselves through those, and the world even then will tell us you can't do that, or that's not the way we do it, or that's not possible. So we spend a lot of time shutting down the imagination. And so when you take someone's imagination away, it's difficult for them to dream. I think what universities have to be, I think what Albany State is destined to do, is to ignite the imagination of everybody we touch, whether they're an adult learner, faculty member, staff, or incoming student. And the reason I say that is because I think the imagination is a foundation for dreaming. When kids are little and they're playing on the floor with their blocks or their dolls or whatever, they're imagining a world that they can control. They're imagining a world that they believe they're destined to be a part of. And somehow, some way, many of those things turn into something that they don't think they can achieve. And boy, when I've been most gratified about the work we get to do is when you're able to, that light bulb goes off. And that student learner, regardless of their age, they say, wow, that's something else, I could do that, or I see myself there. The old saying that if you can see it, you can be it, is really true. But I think part of our job, our challenge, our opportunity is to get them to see it.
I love that. What have been, and I love that you have often said, you've been here for, I think it's going on 2 weeks, you unbelievably have hit the ground running at warp speed.
I actually have the shoe leather too.
I believe you. At warp speed, we all are trying to keep up, but it's a good and a necessary pace for the institution. One of the things that you have consistently said in that short period of time is that you are here to partner with the stakeholders here, with the students, the faculty, staff, certainly the community, because all of those factions play a role in the success and the advancement of the institution. You have also shared, I don't want individuals to get fixated on any timeline in terms of my leadership. Whether it's 6 days, I love that, 6 months, or 6 years. We are here collectively to affect change. Having kind of put that stake in the ground, what is it that you envision for the institution and how you will factor in that advancement?
So, the chancellor asked if I would come and serve, and that to me was an honor to do, and I was flattered that he asked. In doing so, I needed to come with a set of things that I know are important to the ethos of an institution, in that I've done this work before and been doing it quite a while. But I also know that there's so many things I don't know about Albany and about Albany State that I yet have to learn. Yet there are some fundamentals as well to ensuring that people have something to follow. I don't think you are asked to be in a position of leadership or a position of guiding an organization, an institution, without having some roadmap that you can share. So I have 5 things that I believe are really critical to my own learning, as well as to the things that I'm going to ask us to do as an institution in the near term, and even possibly the longer term. And the first one is really understanding our culture. What is the culture of Albany State? What is the culture of Albany as a city? What is the cultural impact that our students feel when they come? Why do they come? And how does culture impact the way we do our work, collectively, individually, and otherwise? How do we measure our success? And cultures shape everything. When you go into an organization, the culture will tell you whether or not it's a place that you want to be.
Indeed.
The second thing is institutions of higher education, in particular universities like ours, have a single source revenue model. That means that tuition and fees are our primary source of income, and that our allocations from the state and support from the state and other parts are designed to help us, but we have to help ourselves through enrollment growth and those things. I happen to believe that what the business side of me says is that single source revenue models are not sustainable. And so part of the other opportunity that I think I have is how do we foundationally lay the groundwork for finding other ways and other sources of revenue to sustain and grow the institution in terms of our programming and what we do and how we do it, and how do we prepare every student learner for the 21st century, making sure they have the competencies to compete. Every single student that leaves here should be well equipped to not only earn and get a return on the investment they've made in the institution and in themselves, but also do it sooner than later.
Yes. Yeah, that's absolutely critical. You mentioned the chancellor, and I'm sure in his identifying and selection process, he looked at a series of things in terms of what the next president should bring. Mm-hmm. You have a very impressive business acumen. If we could briefly talk about that, and then apply that to Albany State University, because oftentimes individuals forget that at the end of the day, in the beginning of the day, this is a business, mm-hmm. and we are our customer, our students. Yep. So speak to the application of that model and why that is important in 2024 and moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely believe that the academic enterprise has to be run like an enterprise. Which means that we have to have a good understanding of revenue and expenses in a very real way. But I think one of the things the academy or the academic community often is not able to do as clearly, and we're going to strive to do this a little better, is to make sure not only are we transparent, but that we engage the faculty, the staff, the stakeholders outside the university, the community members even, certainly our alumni, in actually how we have to run the institution in order for it to sustain itself. And that means we have to understand that it's great to have a lot of programs. It's great to think about the shiny new object. But we have to be very clear about how we invest resources in every object that we choose.
Sure.
Because our customer depends on it. Mm-hmm. I have a saying that says, sometimes, and this is my business background would tell you, and I've lived or worked in about 60 countries around the world, and I've lived in almost every state in the United States. You have to make what you can sell and not sell what you can make. And what that means is academic enterprises often have courses and degrees and programs that they believe are best for the students.
Yes.
But it's not based on necessarily what the market says is best for the student. And if the student doesn't know, then we run the risk of guiding them incorrectly. I was listening recently to another group of scholars talk about this misalignment between industry and the academic community. And the industry has increasingly said over the last 2 decades, you're not giving me people that have the readiness capability for my industry, for my work, for my company. And we have to get better at that. And I think Albany State is a place that we can do that and do that even better than we are today. So part of my focus is also one of those 5 things. The third one is student success. And student success really is the alignment of their interest, their passion, to what the marketplace is asking for.
Absolutely.
And that's us having the academic programming and the instructional design that delivers that. This generation is not all that keen on sitting in a classroom 24/7. They want to touch and feel. They want more experiential learning. I think that we can create those opportunities for them in a more abundant way that could drive their success faster.
Sure. That speaks to that whole holistic engagement with our students. And I, too, have heard that on a consistent basis from business and industry on having a well-prepared individual. So we do the academic discipline very well.
Right.
Always room for improvement, but we do that really well and create some or provide some great options for our students. But then their ability to also understand that there are some norms that are associated with their professional spaces.
Right.
And so we have to certainly be more intentional with infusing that into the curriculum and the instruction. So again, when they then walk across the stage and walk into whatever it is that they desire to do very well, that they are certainly prepared.
Right.
Let's speak to our to the listeners who are part of the greater community. This is not uncommon in terms of institutions across the country, that they sit in the middle of small town, big town USA, and they're kind of operate in silos. There is not that connectivity that needs to happen, although those institutions are huge economic drivers for the entire community, city, state. They have a huge footprint, but there's a misalignment, and you used that word earlier, or a disconnect between the greater community. Let's speak to those community stakeholders on how you envision or plan to bridge that.
Yeah, I mean, if I could respectfully say that I think the toughest and most difficult part of the president's job of an institution like ours is to make sure that the community feels as much a part of the institution as the institution sits in the community.
Yes.
And I think that's difficult because you have to really understand where the community is. It kind of goes back to culture.
Mm-hmm.
Some of it is long-standing, some of it is current, but communities live in their feelings. They, they feed off of the things that they've experienced personally, and the personal relationship they have with an institution or not. I think one of the most difficult jobs is helping to talk with them and understand what kind of relationship they have today and what kind they'd like to have, and how we can actually, as an institution, begin to build the trust and the relationship that says that this is one Albany, but more importantly, one Albany State University that appeals and addresses the needs of everyone who lives here.
Outstanding. One of the things that I've observed about you in a short period of time is you have the gift of being able to vacillate, if you will, between teacher and student mode. And so based upon the moment that you were in, you will then adjust. And so I hear you oftentimes, you're right now, you're heavily in student mode. And what I mean by that is working to learn as much as you can about the culture, the experiences, the perspectives of those that are invested in Albany State University, whatever position or hold or seat that they sit in. So I've been impressed with that. And then you can also transition quickly into teacher mode when you see that there's a need to provide a level of education. And that's certainly a key element of a successful leader. So I want to acknowledge that to you. I have not had that opportunity, and certainly do that publicly. We've got a lot to do in a short period of time. And what I mean by that, oftentimes, and I know you've experienced this as an educator, they're like, oh, it's the summertime, so you have a little lull.
Right.
And that we never have a lull during the summer months.
Right.
So we're
no
preparing,
such
no such thing. We are now preparing for the fall semester. Yes. Let's give some words of guidance to our incoming freshman class.
Right.
Another record number we're expecting, and then those returning students in terms of what they can look for in you as the president of Albany State University.
Well, I think one of the things that I think is most important for the student president relationship is that, like a parent, you're present. When I would go on vacation with my kids when they were much younger, they would admonish me if I wasn't present, if I was on the phone or doing stuff that wasn't part of the vacation. And they'd say, Dad, we're on vacation.
Oh, nice.
You're not supposed to be on the phone. And I'd say, you're right, I need to be present. Translated to your question, I really want to make sure that I'm present on campus. While I do have to spend time away for all kinds of different things, regularly making sure that I'm visible to students, whether it be in the CAF or at events, is really, I think, important. We don't want to play the game of where's Waldo, where's the president. We don't see him, we don't know who he is. I'm not going to allow that to happen. And so for our incoming, I want them to know they're coming to an amazing place that has amazing potential that they can help shape. For those who are returning, I want them to know that they haven't done their best work yet, and that we want to try to help them do that.
Outstanding. I had to pause on that for a moment. And then that certainly connects well with the being present. And so what I would like to also add to that is whatever your station, freshman to senior, be present in the moment. Know that you may experience your best, but then there is also better that awaits. And you were the author of that. That's outstanding.
It is a fascinating and yet tremendous responsibility to help another human being be the best version of themselves. And I think that's our job to do. That's the value proposition that our student learners are paying for.
Yes. I want to touch upon a point that information that you shared earlier about you are clearly a very well-traveled, well-learned man, and you've lived all across the globe, and share that you have lived in every state in the Union. If you could recall the most transformative experience that you've had in your travels, and what state or country did that occur in?
Well, I'd say on the first, I guess there's a couple of examples I could share, and I'll try to share them on parallel. Probably my most transformational experience is actually when I went to Fisk University as an undergraduate student. I went to visit the school when I was in the 10th grade on a college tour because my grandmother wanted me to go. And I got to Nashville, and in those days, the college recruiter actually drove to Pittsburgh in her car, and we were in the top higher percent of the student graduating class, or of the what we call the scholars class. And 5 of us got in her car, all 5 of us, 4 students and her, drove back to Nashville during Thanksgiving weekend. And during that weekend, we had a chance to live in a dormitory, see the campus, and we had an opportunity to visit students who were actually having the Greek show during the Thanksgiving weekend. And when we saw the excitement and the activism and just the vibrancy of the campus, we were just over the moon with, wow, this was, so for a kid, coming, that hadn't been very many places by that time, that was just over the moon for me. I made up in my mind that that was where I was going to go to college. And even though I was a pretty good student, had a chance to go a number of other schools, when the seniors were gathered and some of the recruiters from Harvard and other places came for the top students, I had made up my mind that I don't care what they offered or what they did. If they chose me or even if they wanted me to apply, I wasn't going to, because I had had that experience. And when I got there as a freshman in 1972, I was just blown away at where I had landed. And to this day, if I could rewind back to my arrival there in Nashville and all the wonderful people that I met along the way and the experiences that I had, which is coming off of the civil rights era of the late 60s, I would go back in a second, even if it was just for a few moments. The second experience that I had was running an international enterprise, which was transformative for me from a business standpoint, because running a multinational organization outside the country is very different than running one inside the country.
Yeah.
And I had these 20 countries that I was responsible for, which was 20 presidents and 20 legislatures and 20 versions of Congress, but also all the people, and then numerous tribes and numerous languages and products that we wanted to sell in those countries. It was fascinating for me to learn about my own history, because that's, of course, my ancestral home in Africa. But also, how does it work today, and how do we as a company influence the consumer habits of people that have a totally different experience than, let's say, where I came from. So that was transformative. And then there were all the nuances of, converting currencies in these local countries to U.S. currency. And so my treasurer and my team arbitraging just the currencies was a real challenge at times. But I'll tell you, I learned so much. And I guess the final piece to tack on to that, because it falls in the middle of these two experiences, is when I was 16, just about 16, we lost our house, and so I was homeless. And lived on the street for quite some time. And I think that transformative experience was a precursor to when I went to college. And then when I got to be an executive in the corporate world, and it has and does every day influence what I do today.
Yeah, very profound experiences, and I'm excited as how you will then attribute those to this current experience here at Albany State University. And thank you for you certainly live your life out loud. That's, again, another observation that I've made, and very transparent. That's an amazing way to connect to people, because oftentimes we stay in the visual aesthetic and then begin calibrating and thinking. So you willingly gift your story to those that are amenable to hearing it and embracing it. So thank you so much for that. There are two questions that I always ask my guests. I give you a little homework assignment. I know you're going to get A's on both of them. So the first question that I ask is to name a book that has impacted you outside of your preferred religious text.
So, I'm an overachiever, so there's two books that come to mind.
Please.
The first book is actually a book that I wrote.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wrote this book after the loss of our oldest child. Mm. One of the things I was very, very conflicted about initially was I needed an outlet to talk about the experience.
Sure.
And my first inclination was to approach it as an academic, and to write in academic terms and do the research in an academic framework. But then I said, I need to do this in a way that my other sons, and my other parts of the community, people, fathers, would be able to understand what it's like to go through the process as a man of losing a child. And so the book really chronicled several fathers and their loss, and how we wanted to turn that experience into a living monument through the book, as a way to talk about the contributions that each of those children made to the world and could continue to make through the book. So that book had writing it, going on tour with it, talking to fathers across the country. And it continues to do that. We still are selling it quite well, and it's still continuing to do what I know my daughter would intend for it to do.
That's beautiful.
The second book is actually one that I picked up recently, and it's probably why I'm sharing it, because it is more recent. And it's called By the Time You Read This, I'm sorry. And it's really about a young woman who committed suicide. She was Miss USA. She was an attorney. But she had suffered from depression, and what drove me to read the book was not just the tragedy that engulfs the manuscript, but it's that I know in this work that we do, the mental health and mental condition and the anxiety that many of our young people have to deal with because of everything that's coming at them is instructive for me. And as the president of the university, I have to see how I can incorporate that into the way we work and what we do, and what kind of environment we build for our student learners, and for our faculty, and for our staff, because quite frankly, everyone is affected. Mm-hmm. And those two books right now, the one is probably more long-standing because it's so embedded in my DNA.
Yes.
The second one is instructive because I believe it's instructional for me and instructive to help me, help my staff and the team at our university embrace many of the things that our young people are experiencing and figure out ways that we can incorporate things that help them and give them an environment that they can be more healthier.
Before we go into the last question, let me respond to both of those books. And I look forward to reading the book that you authored. That was extremely commendable and admirable. I'm sure it was very a healing journey for you, a part of your healing journey in terms of your the loss of your daughter. And let me extend condolences, because I'm not sure when it happened, but it's something that I'm
2017.
Sure
Yeah.
Live with it every day. Absolutely. But so often society, when there is a loss of a child, we focus on the mother. I'm a mother of two young adults, and the father just kind of fades into the background.
Right.
So it's a mother's loss, it's a mother's pain.
Right.
And oftentimes we forget that there are two individuals that are responsible for bringing, procreating and bringing this gift to the world.
Yep.
So having not yet read it, and again look forward to it, thank you for seeing those individuals who have walked and shared that journey with you through the book. The world did learn of this unfortunate loss and put a greater spotlight on mental health and the significant work that needs to take place as it relates to mental wellness. Mm-hmm. And so oftentimes I've had conversation with our staff, and specifically our director of counseling and accessibility services, Ms. Bradley, about how so many students, and it's just not specific to Albany State University,
Right.
but they come to these institutions, and certainly ours, with major traumas,
Yes.
coupled with, the onslaught of what the world hands us on a daily basis.
Right.
And so, of course, that impacts our mental health and wellness. And we all were traumatized in
Right.
2019
Yep.
with a pandemic.
That's right.
And still going through that recovery process.
Yep.
So we can no longer ill afford to turn a blind eye or behave
Right.
as if that is something that we have to then, on top of educating these students,
Right.
yeah,
Right.
with them based on their chosen academic discipline,
Yep.
that we have to also allocate resources and also serve in the capacity of teaching students that this is a part of your existence, the
Right.
care and the wellness.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, the whole irony of what you just described is I think we talk about teaching as if it's one way.
Mm-hmm.
The way I think our institution and many of us in this space have to rethink that teaching is binary.
Yeah.
That our student learners are teaching us, and they don't have a quiz or a test that they're going to give us out of a book.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be how we treat them, how we respond to the trauma and the lived experiences that they bring.
Yes.
They're judging our ability to respond to them on the basis of how we respond to those things, in the context of understanding that they come with that trauma, but then so do we.
Mm.
I teach a class on emotional intelligence, and one of the things that is so apparent to me is the lack of awareness of so many of us about the impact that we have on others, because we're so concerned about the impact that others are having on us.
Yeah.
And as I mentioned earlier, communities live in their feelings.
Sure.
Human beings often are conditioned to live in their feelings. The brain is a very protective mechanism of feelings.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at brain science in general, feelings are very much a part of how the brain synthesizes our actions and activities. It responds to stimulus. But we have to really be mindful that the era in which this institution was founded and built, it's not the same era. And so what do we do differently? I often say that people use tradition as a proxy for not doing what they know they need to do.
Well said.
Because they say to themselves, it's tradition.
Yeah.
It's the way we've always done it. Well, I get that. And there's some traditions that are extremely important for us to preserve. But there's also importance to not lose the tradition,
Yes.
but understand the progressive nature of the environment in which we live. We've got an audience that's different.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to give them the sense of tradition in a different way. They don't hear it the same. They don't see it the same. I think that's one of the challenges of America, is we're still in this grand experiment
Yes.
that is evolving on a daily, almost minute-by-minute basis. And our ability, all of ours, ability to embrace that change and pivot to a new version of ourselves is hard.
Yeah.
But that is the cards we've been dealt, and the question is,
Absolutely.
how do we do it?
Yeah, and quite necessary. And so the tradition is certainly a part of the essence of the organization, the individual,
Yeah.
but it cannot dictate how we move forward and
Right.
advance and
Absolutely.
certainly evolve.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So my last question, Dr. Dragon, we'll have you back as many times as you will allow me to invite you and you accept, because I know the message and the story will continue on, and we certainly want to educate our viewers about the great things that we have in store and that we are doing. So know that invitation remains. So my last question, if you had an opportunity to invite 2 to 3 individuals that our viewers may or may not be familiar with on an international scale to dinner, who would those individuals be? Why have you invited them? And what would you serve?
So, one of the people that I know I would want to invite is the Prime Minister of Finland. I spent some time there, and the top 20% of college graduates in Finland want to be teachers. And when you look at Parliament, many of the Parliament members, or the PMs, are former teachers. Teaching is valued, highly coveted. And the reason I would invite him is because, one, Finland has some pretty good food, so put that aside. But secondly, I want to understand more about what that country's future is going to look like. Inside of Parliament, there's a committee, when I was there last, that was called the Futures Committee within Parliament. And its job was to do data and data analysis and data analytics and discussion and research around the future of the country, and that's all they focused on, was the future of the country. And I often ask myself, if we had a similar committee in our Congress, what would it look like? Who would be in it?
Great question.
Don't know, but I certainly would like to have him at the table. The second person that I would invite would be somebody from this community. I don't know who, because I don't know everyone yet. But someone that loves Albany. Someone who cares about our university and its stature and status in this city. And I would invite them because those kinds of gatherings should be places where you don't know everybody.
Indeed.
And you don't know everything you need to know. And they could give you an education around dinner that you might not otherwise ever be able to get. So certainly that would be one person. And then the third person would be my wife. And the reason that I would invite her is because she can tell the other two people more things about me than I can tell about myself. Because she knows me pretty well.
Yeah.
And she's a unique individual in my view that I think has a worldview that's different from mine. But I think she adds to any table she sits at.
Yes.
And I would serve an amalgamation of things that each of those people would enjoy. The international flavor.
Sure.
The local flavor that is Albany, which I'm learning and don't know quite yet what that is. And definitely the things that my wife knows that I enjoy. Because I hate to sit at a table and there's nothing there that I want to eat. And so I think those three would be very eclectic, because a woman's view comes to the table, an international view comes to the table,
yes,
and a local view comes to the table.
Yes, yes. I love that. I love that. Certainly look forward to meeting your lovely wife, and I'm sure confirming what I believe already and how you all complement one another very well. Sir, I'm elated that you accepted my invitation to allow me to introduce you to the greater community. I know our faculty, students, and staff will learn more about you in the coming days, weeks, months, and years, so I'm excited to be a part of that. Wish you continued success, and excited about the impact that I know you will not only make at Albany State University, but those within and beyond your reach. So this is my formal welcome to Albany State University to you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
It is my pleasure.
And thank you for having this interview, and I hope it's something we can do moving forward.
Absolutely. I look forward to it. Yeah. Viewers, thank you so much for joining me for this special edition of Realizing Potential. I'm Wendy Wilson, and I look forward to seeing you next time.